Welcome to another Blacktooth video blog. This one's actually in response to a question that was asked, which is great. I want you guys to join the conversation. Tell me what you want to hear, what you want to know, and what interests you, because that's what we're interested in. This is about a culture, and this is about a family, and that's why I want to know what you guys want to know, and that's why I want to discuss it. I want to know what bothers you and what enlightens you. So keep up with those questions. But anyway, this is from a YouTube friend of ours, Plantera7, I believe. Yes. Um, Asked me the question about the mosh pit etiquette, and if I thought there was a difference between old school and new school, and the difference in a pit and a crowd and that kind of thing, which is a very interesting and a very good question. Um, I feel like I'm kind of on the cusp between new school and old school, because I'm a huge fan of the really old metal, and when I say old metal, I'm talking about the originals, Sabbath, Zeppelin, Deep Purple, that kind of stuff, which is old now, and it's still pretty young. But anyway, I think the hardest part about it is the true definition between new and old. For me, when I was growing up and stuff, Pantera was new. That was the new thing, and that was the big powerhouse of a metal band. They were carrying the flag, and they were the new school. And bands like Motley Crue and stuff like that were the old school, and then obviously, of course, back to Sabbath and stuff like that. Now I feel like Pantera is almost considered the old school. I get called old school because I say I listen to Testament and Slayer, and these are old bands apparently. They're still out there, which is awesome. But there's a real fine line, when you jump from, say, Testament and Slayer, who's still playing shows, to bands like Lamb of God and Machine Head and other big name metal bands that are playing out there now. They all still have the same kind of definition of sound, and I think because of that, they all kind of still have the same kind of mosh pit. They all still kind of have the same mentality behind them. Um, but all this runs into to what are genre demographics, and I hate them. I hate picking genres. Especially with metal, because there's 45,000 different types of metal that you can listen to, and different genres of metal that you can delve into, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's cool that we're so diverse, but it's crazy that there's so many different tiny little facets of this music. But that's a topic for an entirely different video blog. I can't get into that now, otherwise you'd be sitting here listening to me for hours on end. Um, but the big difference is the old pit, I would say, had more of a punk type of mentality, a very grassroots, guys jumping off of speakers, and kids just slam dancing into each other. Guys on the edge of the pit with their arms crossed to keep the circle, and things like that. And what's happened is, as this punk style has been introduced to metal, it's really kind of, metal has adopted it as something, and it kind of transgressed, and some people would say like hardcore is more the metal today, or more the punk today. Again, we're talking finite demographics. If it's fucking heavy and it's got a mentality, it's metal. Read the editorial I did about what is metal. You'll get my idea. But beyond that, we can really credit a lot of the personality and influence of metal to the slam dancing styles of punk, and that release that really is there. Metal has certainly made it its own, and I think that's huge. So now with the new pit, again, there's that issue, because I still feel like I'm part of the new generation, but I'm told I'm part of the old generation, but I know guys that are in my generation, and it's so close to that gray line that it's really hard to know. I go to shows, and I still see the dudes flailing around doing the punk style of slam dancing, and wiggling around and shit like that, and I still see dudes doing the stomping around and slamming into each other. In all honesty, I really don't think it is a generation or an old school versus new school. I think it's a culture for that sound, and it can change from band to band. It can change from song to song. It'll certainly change from show to show. And I think another big part about it is the general region. Um, I think the East Coast gets a little bit more into that hardcore slam dance style, guys wailing around with their fists balled up, and like where I'm at in the Midwest, you get a lot more of the guys just pushing the shit out of each other and knocking each other down and stuff like that. You know, there is a fine line, and it's really hard to say exactly because I haven't been to every show everywhere, and I haven't seen this entire country. I'm working on that. um, so I guess the other big part about it is singing versus screaming. Plantera 7 actually mentioned the Big Four versus Scream Till You Bleed. And these are great ways to explain the different types of music. Because the Big Four, I mean, you've got bands like Megadeth. Anthrax still kind of had that punky scream to it, but it wasn't screaming. But certainly Megadeth has that unique, I'm singing but I'm talking, and then he goes into some of the yelling, and it's different. It is different, and anybody who listens to metal knows. They can tell. They can read it and see it and hear it. But that does negate a difference, or not negate, that creates a difference in the crowd. And the really, to me, doesn't change the depth of the pit, per se, but it actually changes the people that are in the pit. And that changes the culture that's in the pit. And I know what I just said is a little confusing, so I'll try to break it down. Basically, when you have the Big Four, you get a crowd that there's some younger kids who are finding bands like the Big Four, and they're adopting them, which is great. That's the way it should be. They should really know where their roots are and things like that. But they're new to the show. But there's also a lot of guys and girls that have been to these shows, and they've been going to them forever, for years, decades even, and they know how a pit operates. And it's almost that there's that passing of the torch in a situation like that. The old schoolers lead by example in that sense. Whereas a newer show, there are fewer old guys. There are fewer old school metalheads versus new school kids. For instance, a band like Trivium. You go to a show like theirs, and there are a lot of old guys there, a lot of old school dudes that are really digging the instrumentals and some of it, Another big one is Job for a Cowboy. There's some old guys there that are just, fuck yeah, but there are way more younger kids there, and sometimes that kind of overpowers the mosh pit because you got a lot of young kids in there that haven't been to many concerts, if any. I've run into a lot of kids that it's their first time at a show, and it's always interesting because kids get scared. It's really entertaining to listen to them talk between bands because they're freaking out about stuff, and it's one of those things where you just have to go. You have to learn it and experience it, and I think that's the difference when you have a younger crowd is they're not experienced at it, and they haven't had anybody to hand that torch down. So that would be, I think, would be the biggest difference between the old school and the new school. Is not necessarily the pits themselves, but the crowds in the pits. I'm an advocate for you always got to teach, even if you know very little, and I'm certainly learning myself. But I always try to communicate and lead by example in those mosh pits. You always got to pick somebody up. You always got to take care of each other, and that's part of what it comes down to. When there are kids who know less about the etiquette, it's important to not necessarily knock their head off their shoulders, and more make sure they see you helping people, picking people up, and taking care of each other. It is a tricky thing because again it's an unspoken rule, like I said in the Mosh Pit Etiquette blog, but it's definitely a doable thing, and if you're a younger one, listen and watch, because that's what you got to do. Pay attention, and you'd be amazed at the cool shit that you'll come away with. So like I said, it's all about picking the people up and taking care of each other. It's all about respect. It's a family. Take care of your brothers and sisters, and that's what we got to do. So with that, keep it metal, and I'll see you soon.